G'day friends, welcome to today's YouTube video. My name is James, welcome back to my channel, welcome if you're new. I've got my little coffee here. It's a grande cinnamon caramel nitro cold brew. Light on the cinnamon, 1 pump of the cinnamon caramel, which is probably still half a pump too much. And I got light cinnamon dolce sprinkles, light cinnamon powder. Just very cinnamony. I love the taste of cinnamon. It is very American to me. The first taste I think I really had of cinnamon was back in Sunday school. I don't even know how, this wasn't even my regular church. I don't know why we were at this Sunday school, but it was in Budgewoi. And or maybe it was a Scouts thing. I'm pretty sure it was Sunday school though. One of the prizes for getting the questions right was a stick of Big Red gum. And I'd never tasted anything like that. And I thought it was so spicy and I absolutely hated it. And I'm pretty sure that's Big Red is the cinnamon one, right? So anyway, all these years later, when I first came to the States when I was 15, I felt like all of the stores had such overwhelming scents. And if you're from Australia, you know this, if you've been to the States, American shops, like if you go to like an Abercrombie, and I'm obviously thinking of the memories I have, but to this day, it's still kind of true. The stores were like, it was like going to a movie world. They had facades and inside it was all kind of, you know, themed. So like the wooden tables would be these like rich oak tables that would match the vibe of the walls. And it seemed like, I don't know, like each store was put together by someone who did theme parks. Like they were very, very themed and they looked like individual standalone kind of shops, which is not what I was used to in Australia. I feel like everything in Australia just had the standard shelves, the standard, like even when you go to Woolies in Australia, they put the box out, the box that the lollies get shipped in, they'll just kind of open the box and put the box on that wire shelf. But if you go to one of these supermarkets here, you go to the bread stand and it's like a display of bread. Like it's not just shoving them all on the thing. It's so weird to explain. I hope Australians know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been to the States, you know that shops here they have a different aesthetic quality that it's like in Australia, you just don't have any of the overlays. I mean, I think it's kind of changed. Like some things in Australia are a little bit different now, but here, like some stores will go to great lengths to not even let you see, you know, how they hang things up. It's just really, really weird. And then some have a facade, like you'll be in the shopping center and the Abercrombie will have like the blinds and the extra molding and the little pillars outside. Like, it looks like the front of a house, like an actual shanty shack. So bizarre. Anyway, I thought all of those stores had very distinct smells and many of them smelled like cinnamon to me. I don't know if that was just a thing that I picked up on. No one else seems to think this. And then ever since I've lived in the States and I've experienced Christmas in the States or like any kind of American Christmas I've had before, cinnamon seems to be everywhere. So for me, I've had an interesting ride with cinnamon. Now it just reminds me of feeling like, it's like an American cozy feeling for me. It's so weird because it feels like holiday and Christmas and I don't know. It just feels really interesting, my feelings and thoughts on cinnamon. How do you feel about cinnamon? Sound off in the comments below. This is going to be a wild one. Obviously, I've just hijacked the voiceover to do whatever I want to do, as per usual. I've got little notes here because I do have some things I want to talk about. And the first thing I'll start with is the 100 Day Project, which is the video you're watching. I think I'm a few days ahead in this video, so even though by the time you see this, it should be Friday. By the time I'm filming it, I was up to Saturday with the drawings, I think. I'm not quite sure, which starts off my whole conversation. The 100 Day Project for me is not, I don't have a rule that like it has to be every single day I have to do one of the things. I'm doing stamping and illustration, which is just a technique where I stamp out all the blueprints, the bases of my drawings, and I illustrate over the top of them. That's just something I've done for years. I love to do it. I think it's just such a fun way to get drawings started and to kind of take out all the guesswork, take out all the proportion stuff. Sometimes you can just stamp together a whole bunch of random stuff. I call that concept stamping. You're stamping together all these really random ideas and you can illustrate from there on top, or you can just illustrate it again based off of that stamp. For these, I'm just illustrating on top of the stamps. So I stamp it off and get rid of a lot of the ink, and I do a second generation or a ghost stamp onto my page so that it's a really light layer of ink. Then I can just draw over the top. I'm using my own stamps, so that's them. There's an Etsy link below if you want to see which ones I still have in stock. Plot twist, there's not many, which is a great thing for me, but it's a terrible thing for me to advertise, so I apologize. The ink is Tim Holtz Distress ink in Lost Shadow, which is a new color that I'm using, which is a very light gray, perfect for this. And I use an acrylic block, and that's about it. That's all the info on it. This is not the first video we've done on this, but there are a lot in this. There was over 7 hours of footage just for these ones today, so I'm gonna have to edit it all together. I'm doing this voiceover completely separately, so I can't really talk about what's happening on the screen. I'm just gonna chat to you about my life right now, and hopefully you can enjoy the visuals. Think of it as like a podcast with someone who does art journaling, and you're watching some art journaling and you're hearing about some art journaling, but is it really an art journaling video? Who knows? Probably not. That seems to be my whole brand right now. On YouTube anyway. I feel like I'm so many different, I'm so many different parts of my business in so many different places. On TikTok, I'm doing my own recaps. I do like funny little videos that really mean nothing. Like it's just this tiny little like play space for my stupid short form videos. And then on YouTube, I'm staying current. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? How I like to share with you about what I'm loving. I like to just show you all the things that are happening, keep you updated on how my process is all going, all of that. On Patreon and in Art Journaling the Magic and in my workshops, I'm teaching. I'm like getting educational stuff out there. I'm trying new things. I'm being a little bit more vulnerable and seeing how that goes. Collage Club, I'm like super focused on doing all of that. Like I feel like I show up in different places, and I just feel like different parts of my business live in those different places. And then at some point I have to, like here on YouTube, I have to kind of blend everything together and say like, here is what's going on, right? Because where's the main part? Like if you're gonna go and find main me, where would you find me? I think Instagram, but I don't really pop up on Instagram and chat as often as I used to, and I don't really do it like lives as often as I used to, so maybe it's YouTube. But I think numbers wise, the most people show up to YouTube, so that's why I feel like it's YouTube. Must be the main me. If you ever want to find me, I'm here. I'm here on YouTube. Not really, I'm everywhere. But like Etsy is the store. It's like the shop. And then Instagram is behind the scenes, or like the daily stuff, like the daily look at everything. Because you only see me here once a week, most times. And then if you see me an extra time, I'm talking about Collage Club, which again is a different thing. Whatever. Big umbrella, JLB Creative. Huge. Can't even manage it. I'm not starting my notes just yet. I'm talking about the 100-day project. Yes, so 100-day project. I don't have to do it every single day. Like day 1 has to be this day, day 2 has to be this day. So if they're a little out of order, that's okay. I don't think they are, but I'm just a little ahead, which some people have different opinions on, honestly, to each their own. Everyone does the 100-day project for a different reason. I think I've mentioned my reasons before. Just curious to do it, love to try new things, and like, you know, even though this is not new, but like trying a new challenge. I've never done the 100-day project before. And right now I'm just not feeling the best because dancing stopped, and you know, it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, I feel like it's a bad thing, but there was no bad reason it stopped. It was just, it ended because, you know, the date was the finish date. So it's just been hard for me to process that because, you know, I had a taste of a really good thing, and I felt like, and I was unfortunately a little correct, that when that all finished, I would be a little depressed. And I did get a little depressed, and I've been incredibly sensitive and very emotional since that happened. I'm dealing with it a little bit better. I think I mentioned this somewhere. I have to try and mention a few things again because I know I've said them on Patreon, but not here. So I am looking forward to tomorrow because I have an audition tomorrow, and that has been something that kind of lifted me out of depression a little bit. So I've kind of put that in my back pocket as like, you know, not the best solution for it because there's not much control I have to, you know, schedule myself an audition. But I now know that as long as I have one thing to look forward to, like in the future, dance-wise, and not too distant future. Like when I found out I had an audition, it was like a couple of weeks between finding out and actually going tomorrow. So, but that has really is it been a couple of weeks? Maybe it was like 9 days. It couldn't have been a couple of weeks because I've been sad for a little bit. Anyway, it has alleviated some of those feelings of depression because I feel like there is something to look forward to. Not even the promise that it'll all work out. Pardon me. My cinnamon cold brew is kicking back on me. So I'll have some more. We'll probably talk about that audition, my thoughts about that, because why not? But I am looking forward to it, and it has been a nice little something to look forward to. But other than that, I felt like, well, maybe the 100-day project would be a little bit of extra distraction, something to make me feel good and make me feel like I'm doing something that's, a little bit challenging and that I can feel good, staying on top of and accomplishing something. I think challenges are great if you're someone like me that just feels so good about accomplishing things. I also think setting your expectations really, really low to achieve them better is also really good. I think I'm like gaming the system there. But it's all about that little serotonin boost, right? I've had really unhealthy times in the past where I've just done a lot of things to achieve them just because I was just in a bad place. But I also like really truly did feel good about achieving those things. I just think I was using that to try and make myself feel better about other things that needed to be addressed. So that can be an unhealthy little form of escapism. But this time I don't think so. I think this time it really is just something to add to my plate that felt like something I really wanted to do and I really wanted to enjoy. And I am really enjoying it. So hopefully you enjoy watching the video of them coming together today, that little process. Speaking of Patreon 3, I'll start with my notes now. General information, we are finishing at the end of this month, so please join now if you want to join for $25 and have access to everything we've done since January. I will bundle it all up and put it on Teachable, where all my other workshops and everything are, and anyone who's joined in March will receive the access code to that. So if you join now for $25, you'll still have access to it after the month has ended and I close the Patreon. It'll be over on Teachable. You'll still have access. If not, it will be bundled up, put on Teachable for $75, which is the cost if you were joined for all 3 months. So just putting that out there, if you're someone that wants to save some money and you do want to get in on it, that's, I think, the most economical way to do it. Of course, I will not watch your wallet. You can do whatever you want to do, but I do want to give you that piece of information. And to anybody else who still hasn't done that refund, at this point, I think you know. You're not going to hear it because you're the people that just aren't doing it. But I have to say it, it's going to be done in the next couple of weeks. Like, that money will be taken out. The 90 days will be up for that refund from January, but the account will be closed. So the refunds from February and March, like, they won't be able to be done on Patreon. So at this point, we're just going to call it what it is. It's just unfortunate. And I'm sure if it really is something you do find a problem, you will contact me at some point. I really don't even know what to do about that. Please get it done if you find out that it was you, because again, I haven't been able to touch any of those earnings this whole month because I need to keep the money in there to refund. You want me to go on my Patreon rant now? No, I won't. Patreon, I think, look, my little recap, I'm not going to do a whole video this time because I don't think anything I said last time needs to be repeated as much depth as I went into last time I did it. I felt like this time I had less of an issue with people coming from different Patreon spaces and bringing in different attitudes from different, I want to say cultures, like there's different cultures in different communities, and the policing that I had an issue with before on Patreon, where people came from other creators who they felt the need to police what I was offering, that has stopped. So that was actually really fun to not have to deal with. The issues with like people being auto re-enrolled, that was still an issue, and people being auto charged when they were auto re-enrolled, that was still an issue. Refunds can be a real issue. I figured out that if people did a chargeback on their auto enrollment, then I couldn't refund it because Patreon would block my ability to refund it because the bank was trying to pull it from my Patreon account. So they didn't want it to be double pulled. So Patreon would disable my refund button, which was really annoying because I had to do that a bunch of times. And this is not because people had an issue with the product. People just didn't realize they were being auto re-enrolled and then they didn't want to pay for it and stay enrolled. So we did refunds. That was completely fine. That is normal. I do at the end of every Patreon say, please, unsubscribe, please cancel the subscription, but some people just don't do that and all their information is still there, and when I reopen it next time, they just get auto re-enrolled. It's an issue. I wish we could fix it, but there's nothing I can do except block all those people, which I think when I block you, it blocks I think it blocks the email. Maybe it blocks the payment account as well. So I don't know, excuse me. I don't really know if that would work, because if you wanted to join again in the future, then maybe you couldn't use the same card. I know for sure you probably can't use the same email, but if it blocks your IP address too, then you probably couldn't use that. So I don't think blocking is the option, but in any case, so I have had to do that before in the past. Unfortunately, we had someone that had passed away recently that I had to do that because they couldn't get into those accounts. So I do know that that is an option as well. And rest in peace to that lovely community member that I've known for years. It's an interesting, like, I'm not going to get into that whole discussion, obviously to respect the family, but this was kind of my first experience of someone within my community passing away. And that was really interesting to deal with emotionally, because I feel like I've been dealing with grief a little bit lately, so this maybe is not a great topic to talk about. You know, what parasocial relationships, right? Like, you guys feel like you know who I am because I get on here and I share all these things with you, but I've always, tried to maintain some level of privacy, and there's still like a lot that I don't share, right? But for the most part, you do know a ton of my stories, like more than most of my friends really know, because if I had to tell them all of this every single time we chatted, maybe they wouldn't be my friends. So you know a lot about what goes on, and things that I don't even remember sometimes. Like, I've had people share, be like, oh, remember when you did that thing? And I was like, did I? I did do that. Yeah, totally. Like, we've had these parasocial relationships, but for it to go back the other way, a lot of people that I engage with don't do YouTube content. They don't have their own channels and create content. They don't have businesses. These are people that I just enjoy being around in the community. I see your comments pop up in places. I see you sharing things on your Instagram, or maybe you're in the Facebook group and you share pictures of stuff that you've done, or you've popped up in live streams and I've seen you in your little, like, in your dress ups when we've done our virtual voyages. So even though I don't know many of you very personally, like I don't know a lot of your personal stories, I do know a bunch. I know a lot, actually. I don't remember a ton, but I know a lot. It's not true. I remember a lot of the stories, but sometimes I can't connect your username to your real name, to your email, to your payment account, to your, like you're all different people to me, but really all those 4 people, like Inky Cat and, Jenny Ruler and, pinkbear@hotmail.com, like all of those are 3 different people to me, but you're actually one person. That's not a real person, by the way. Just made that up. But yeah, it's interesting because I feel like perhaps there have been people in our community that have passed away before that I have interacted with that I just didn't know, but this was someone that I felt like I have seen around for a really long time and I was very familiar with, and it felt a little difficult. Like, I felt like we don't know each other super personal enough for me to mourn and enter grieving the way that I would, with my family. But there was definitely, it like touches on my heartstrings a lot. Like, it really pulls on me and I feel sad. So that's an interesting new experience that I don't really know what to do with. I might have to look up on YouTube how to deal with that. It's just, I imagine that's a pretty new feeling for people, because what did we do in the past? Like, we didn't have social media. We didn't form such intense parasocial relationships with others. And we also didn't have these kinds of relationships that, I mean, maybe they were reserved for celebrity, right? Where you know a lot about one person, but they don't know much about you. But in this way, like, I didn't know too much. We were in each other's circles, and I was a teacher, and I was, sending products, and I was engaging with social media. I mean, I guess I had a parasocial relationship with this person, but, just very interesting experiences. But as far as Patreon goes, those are the pieces of information. Join, or wait, or don't ever. That's also an option. Or refund. Those are my points. On Monday, we did another episode in the playback series, which is like diving into my memories. And I did daily life in Japan, which was super fun to go back into. Made me very, very nostalgic. I am a nostalgic person. One of my favorite feelings is feeling very swept up in my memories, very sentimental. It's like a I wrote this somewhere, but it's like a bittersweet form of escapism for me. And I, like, a lot of the times at night when I can't get to sleep, I will very specifically think about daily life in Japan and like, the really small details of things that would happen in the day, just so that I can lull myself into some peace and fall asleep. And my brain kind of hyperfixates on a lot of things. And so I feel like when I'm fixating on that topic specifically, I get really calm and I get a really sweet sense of like joy. It's just interesting. One of the like most joyous experience I ever had in my life, or like the time I felt the most free and most joyful and the most like, it was like an unbelievable sense of elation. I can always pinpoint back to when this was, and I was riding my bike in Japan, and I just had this like, I was riding it from E-Village to the station. I had the most overwhelming sense of like this is pure joy. This is what it feels like to be unbelievably happy. And I can always go back to that moment. So anyway, it was really lovely to revisit all of that. And that's why in that post, if you saw it on Instagram, if you're not on Patreon, that's why I'm riding the bike. Because that is just one of those things. I know I've mentioned that before. Even in some of my old stream of consciousness pages, I've drawn me on the bicycle, or like just the bicycle, because I can't draw bicycles to save my life. But it like is a weird symbol of unbelievable joy to me. I don't really like bike riding. I'm not a BMX person. I really couldn't care less to go out on rides. We just had bikes in Japan because it was a part of life, right? Like, you would ride it to the station, you had a little basket in there, you put your snacks in there and come back. And that was just something that was very, very interesting. So that was a nice kind of dive back into my memory. I love those playback episodes. There's so much good stuff on Patreon that I can't wait to bring to YouTube, because at this point, those are all exclusive videos for that bundle of content. But the series that I was testing and that I was trying, I want to bring to YouTube. The only thing I'm confused about is because I alliterated most of the titles like an absolute idiot, they're day specific. So Wednesday are Wednesday videos. I can't imagine trying to put up a Wednesday video on a Friday. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I was thinking that like I would switch up my YouTube schedule. Instead of Friday videos every week, maybe start a Monday to, like, this week it's Monday, next week it's Tuesday, next week it's Wednesday. So I think it revolves in an 8-day cycle rather than a 7-day cycle. But then I feel like you're having to wait an extra day to get your content. So let me know what you think about that, or what you would do. I also thought maybe I would keep the Friday videos, and that those content, like the serieses, would just be an extra content for that week. So much how like at the start of the month, I put your Collage Club video up and then you still get your Friday video. I think maybe once I used the Collage Club video as the Friday, maybe, but I don't really like that, because I feel like it's not really, I mean, it's a video, but I feel like I'm not really doing anything in it. I'm just kind of talking. Well, what am I doing now? No, at least I'm doing something, but like, I guess I do talk about journals and stuff. I don't know. I guess it's fine. On YouTube, it's fine. I wouldn't, yeah. Anyway, so you get those extra videos. So maybe sometimes I would add an extra video that was in a part of a series. And then a part of me is also like a little upset that the series won't be complete, because there'll be some of those videos that exist only in that Patreon bundle. So that I've already had to try and wrap my head around, that 2 of the playback episodes will not be in those series. They'll have to start again. It's like having a pilot episode of a television. You know, when you go back and you watch the pilot and it's kind of nothing like the rest of them, but it set up the tone for everything. It's kind of like that. I've got a couple of pilot episodes that just exist there. I mean, at least they exist, right? I'm really happy. I know we're not finished Patreon yet, but I'm really happy with how all of that went. I'm in 2 minds, because I feel like, as much as all the video content was, like, it was a ton of work and prep and scheduling and planning to do all like the 3 videos a week. It also felt like I was missing some of the old stuff by way of like the formatting and stuff. Like when I used to format out the Playtest Press, which was like my little newsletter. But at the same time, I really do feel like as cute and as nice as those things were, they were such an unbelievable amount of time to put together for a payoff that I don't think was quite worth it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you really have to weigh up sometimes, like if all the energy and effort and time and money and everything I'm going to put into this, is it going to really pay off? And sometimes, unfortunately, it just doesn't. So right now, I think I did what was the right thing to do in sacrificing a lot of that for extra video content, because I feel like that's where people find value right now. Might change over time, but I think that's where I'm seeing this shift go. Longer videos with more substance, with more candid chats, with deeper thoughts, with more raw opinions, and, you know, more journaling, more. We just want more. Isn't that the way? Isn't that just life? But anyway, so we started that. Playback, we did Daily Life in Japan. Loved that. Monday night, it's a bit off topic, but not really. I went to Zumba, which has started my week. This week I've been very intentional about the self-care because I have my audition tomorrow. And so I felt like I would give myself the whole week to take care of myself and make sure I'm ready for that. Also, I have a really, really packed work schedule this week. So Zumba is kind of like the only thing that I would throw in there to give myself a break from all the work. But it is all good because I have a holiday coming up in 3 weeks. So I've just got to push through till then. Monday, I went to Zumba. I was going to pull a double, but unfortunately, our gym is putting an extra studio upstairs, which I'm like kind of terrified. Well, I was terrified for, because honestly, like in my head, I'm still really, really heavy, and I felt like I was going to fall through the floor if I started jumping upstairs. Because I always hear them dropping the free weights upstairs, and I always felt like they were going to drop through the ceiling. I'm mental. I have like a lot of very vivid imaginations of catastrophe. But that's just PTSD for you. So anyway, that's a bit of a real fear I had. And on Monday, I was going to do a double. Steve was at a photo shoot. It's kind of rare that I miss photo shoots with Steve, but even this week, like, have not been available. So I said to him, you know, I'll just come pick you up afterwards. I had to drop him off at the studio in Santa Ana and then run all the way back over down here to the gym to get to the Zumba, because if you don't get there early enough, you will lose your spot. And there's something about us Zumba girls that is very crazy, and we need to keep our spots. I have 2. I need to be right near the door because I need to be able to make a quick exit. That's just my thing. It's also closer to the mirror, and I find it easier to see myself if I'm close to the mirror. I don't want to see myself too far away from the mirror. And then if I don't get that spot, because there's another lady with curly hair, if she ever gets there before me, she takes that spot, which, like, I can't be mad at her, but at the same time, we're all creatures of habit, and I know that when I'm there before she's there, I think she gets upset that I stand there. And we're not the only ones. That's, like, very common. There are people that stand in their spots. I even saw one lady move another lady out of her spot because that's where she stands all the time. And she came there after her, and it was like a whole mess. But yeah, we have a little quiet understanding that, like, it is what it is. If she gets there first, she can have it. If I get there first, I can have it. And then my secondary spot is just behind that spot near the pole. And it's fine. I'm okay to stand there, but it's obviously not my primary position, secondary position, just like she does. We're all like that. We're crazy. It's cultural at Zumba. So anyway, they were doing an upstairs studio, but it hasn't been finished. And they kept telling us, oh, you're going to move in, like, this will be your last lesson down here. Totally not true. And it's not an issue really, but they've been really packing those classes full, especially for the more popular instructors. Like, I would say realistically that class could hold 35 people, considering we're doing Zumba, right? Like, arms are flailing, people are falling to the ground, like, it's a whole mess. So I don't think more than 35 people should be in there. Like, you should be able to put your arms out wide and helicopter around and not touch each other. That's just my vibe. But that's not the case. And it's funny because in pandemic times when we were reopening and we had little dots on the floor, we had so much space because I think they would only put 20 people in that class, max. Which, I mean, I don't know all the science about how that actually worked. Like, they said that because we were wearing the masks, it was fine, but, like, I was breathing pretty heavy. Like, I'm sure some of those particles got out of the mask. Don't ask. I'm not a scientist. But anyway, so we went from that, like, 20 into, like, I would say, you know, it started opening up when people didn't have to wear masks anymore. That really flooded people back into the classes. And they only had to put an extra class on that night because the one that was there was so packed. And she's a great instructor. I love her. She's one of my favorites too. So that's why I'm up there like 15, 20 minutes early to get into class. What they did is you'd have to get a ticket. So then they opened it up to 40 people. Now it's 45 people per class, which way too much. One of these classes over here has 60. So don't ask me how big that space is. Probably 5 meters bigger than this one. It cannot fit 45 people in there, but try as they might. We're all in there trying to get these tickets, and they didn't explain to us, but if you don't get the ticket and print it out at the gym 5 minutes before the class starts, all the reservations for the tickets suddenly open up, and whatever's left, anyone in the gym can get. So I didn't realize, but like there were a few times, first time wasn't my fault because I didn't know this. The other few times I was just leaving it to chance and I lost. There have been a few times I've gone to the gym and had to go home because I could not get into the class. And I had reservations for it, but I got there like one time I got there 4 minutes before and there was already a line of people ready to take all of the extra reservations. And I'm standing in the line thinking, I have a reservation for this, but I'm just not going to get to the ticket booth in time to get the ticket. Like it's, all these people are going to clear it out before. Anyway, so that's how that Zumba works. It's a big to-do. It's a big situation. But they put us all in this thing, and ever since it's been really, really rainy here, like it's been very rainy these past months, actually, especially this past week, though, they've been shutting the doors, but I think all of the rain just kind of is humidity in the air, or like there's just moisture in the air, right? And then there's 45 of us in this room packed tight, and then they have to keep the door open at the front because they need to let some of this air escape because it's way too hot in there for all of us. So we're dying 2 minutes in, we're all dripping with sweat. It's like hot yoga, but it's like hot Zumba. And then because the door's open, randos from the gym just come in and join the class. So we had 45 people go to about 57 people. Nowhere to move. Everyone's dying. This was Monday, and they've had this before, but all of the condensation, it starts to fog up the mirrors and then it settles on the floor. So it's actually really, really slippery. It's like dancing on a wet surface. I know that sounds so gross, but it's not mostly sweat. I think it's just humidity in the air, whatever. All of that to say, I was going to pull a double. I got 40 minutes through the class and it was just too unsafe for me to keep going. I would have done it any other week, but because I have my audition tomorrow, I'm not trying to put my body in any kind of risk. So unfortunately I had to bow out. I left early, went over to Steve's, and he was doing a photo shoot, which actually turned out to be really, really great. I think he's planning on sharing an Instagram reel, so maybe by the time you see this, it'll already be up. Go check it out because it was really, really good. The guy that he was shooting with, he works with at Disney, and he said he had never modeled before, and I call side-eye on that because he was giving very much GQ, very much Wonderland, very much Vogue Homme. It was really good. Really, really good. I felt happy for Steve because obviously it feels nice to, you know, do something and feel successful, and he felt very successful. So I helped with that. I was over there. I do a lot of the posing. If you don't know what I do, Steve shoots. It can be a mystery. I'm technically his assistant, but I don't do any. I do a lot of the things. I just don't commit a lot of the technical stuff to memory. So I don't really know how to set the lights up or like how to set the computer up or anything. I do know how to position the lights and where I want them. And like, I'm like that person that has a lot of opinions, but doesn't know the technical side behind it. And I'm going to keep it that way. But so I help Steve with all of that. And then if we have female clients or anyone with long hair, I usually have these little, poster boards, and I do the wind. You might have seen that in my Insta stories. I'm pretty good at the wind. And then I help pose. And I used to not help with the men because I've only ever been interested in like female fashion and, you know, only female fashion stuff. Like I was never really cared about men before. And I used to tell Steve, like, I can't pose men, I can only pose females. And he was like, well, that's ridiculous. I think you could. And I was like, well, I'll try. And so I was struggling in the beginning because I felt like I only had female poses. So I kind of learned a little bit, and then now I feel like I'm pretty okay on the men's poses. I like to ride the line between them, honestly. I like to make the men's posing a little bit more feminine just because I think it reads a little bit more editorial. But yeah, so now I help with posing both genders or any gender in between, really. But yeah, that's what I do when I help Steve, and it was fantastic. The results from that shoot, I would say Steve's been doing really, really well, but that particular shoot had the most amount of completely different and completely usable editorial shots. We wouldn't usually shoot for more than like 4 looks in a shoot, and we try and random it up a little bit, but also like as realistically, like what the standard that I'm looking for, the quality that I'm looking for, and Steve and I differ on this a lot. Like I'm looking at it as like, would I put that in a magazine? Would I choose that one? And so when I pick, I'm very, very picky. Steve will do a cull and he'll get down to like 150 images that he thinks are like, these are the best ones. And then that's when I'll look at them and he'll say, can you pick your pick? And I will most of the time cut that down to 10, like 10 or 12 max. This one I chose 50, which is so unlike me. Like I am usually very, very selective. And I do that not because I think all the other ones are bad, but I only want Steve to be left with like the skim the cream off the top. I want him to know that like of all the fashion magazines I've ever read in my whole entire life since I was 14 years old, these are the pictures I would look through the magazine and be convinced that they should be there. And then obviously Steve goes back in and fleshes them out the way that he sees fit, which is important. I think he used to feel like he had to only use the ones that I chose, but I've been trying to encourage him to be more confident about his own selection and see my opinion as subjective and his opinion as subjective and neither one right or wrong, which I think the longer that he's been doing this and the more he's thrown himself into reading fashion magazines and engaging with fashion photographers and editorial photographers, I think he's now really starting to trust his own choices a lot more, which makes a lot of sense. I think when he thought I knew more about that, he trusted that I knew what I was talking about, so he would just go with it. But I never wanted him to rely on me for that because it is ultimately his expression. Like it's his voice, it's his photography, and he needs to back it the most. So I think we're in a good place. I think it's that definitely on Monday, like he barely need. Most of the other times he'd be waiting for me to do the checking and like to do the picking. This time he had already picked it and was like pretty much ready to go, and he asked if I wanted to, which is very different. Usually he's pushing the computer in front of my face being like, please now, please now. And this time he was like, oh, only if you want to, like I've got it covered, like I'm pretty good. So that's really nice. I really enjoy seeing him go through this creative journey, like through this process, right? I remember what that's like to be in that stage of that journey and be so excited and to notice the points that you're growing exponentially and that you've really like taken these leaps and bounds. I mean, ultimately you get to a point where all of that seems normal, and it does get harder to break new ground when you get to a point where you're actually really confident and comfortable with everything that you've got. And you know, that's a different type of peace, being in that place, which, you know, I enjoy. But for Steve, like, this is just, it's exciting to watch. And I like being a part of it too. I've always loved fashion. I've always loved fashion photography, fashion magazines. And so this is like my little top model fantasy. I'm, you know, on Top Model when they had Miss J and Mr. J, I'm just one of those J's. So that was where I was on Monday. I'm just going through my schedule. Tuesday I went to Zumba again, and I'm only going to bring up Zumba this time because we did make it to the upstairs studio. They did decide to finish it. I mean, maybe not. There were a few lights that were missing, and I don't know if it's fully finished. The staircase is still wrapped up in plastic, so who knows. I think it's a little bit bigger than the one that was downstairs. It seems like it, but there's also a lot more mirrors and bigger windows, which is nice. I prefer it. I'm going to say it. I prefer it. There was no condensation on the floor this time, so it felt a lot safer. And best for me, there is a new door spot that is mine. Honestly, I was like, I've marked my territory at this point. I was one of the first people in here. Everyone saw me at this spot. You know, it's my spot. You should have seen us getting in there, trying to like, it was the first Zumba class, because I was there the night before. It was the first Zumba class that was up there in that new space, and I could see everybody trying to figure out where they wanted to be. People starting the class over here and ending the class over here, and I was thinking, I've got the door. Sorry to everyone. It's gonna be real awkward too when I get there early and I stand at the door and everyone has to come past me to get in. They're gonna be like, why don't you just go and be in the space? I can't help it. I need to be near the door. I need to know that I can escape quickly. That's just my thing. Like, why bother trying to fight that? It is something that I can do, so I just do it. Because in my head, in the back of my head, I'm like, you should really address that because it could hinder you. And I'm like, it really doesn't. I mean, in certain places, if I can manage it, I try it. But in other places where I can't manage it, I have learned to deal with it. So it's like a compromise for my PTSD. Anyway, I got my spot. Nothing more to say about that. Love that from me. Wednesday, we did Wednesday, which was our sixth one. I think that has been the longest running series we've had on Playtest Patreon, has it not? Because it was starting our first week. So we've done a lot of those, and I'm really happy with those too. They have been really interesting, and I really like this last one because it was about taking simple illustration and it was about separating illustration from rendering and finishing, because I really do believe there are some differences there where you have the ability to sketch something out and draw something. Even the idea of like coming up with something unique and whatever, like that's its own skill. Drawing and illustrating is its own little skill. Rendering is its own skill, and depending on which mediums you use, there are a whole different set of skills you can have within those. So you might be really good with pencils, you might be really good with watercolor, but you might be terrible with gouache, you might be terrible with crayons. Like, we all have skills in all of these different places. You might be great at illustrating and following someone showing you step by step, but maybe you're just not so great at coming up with it yourself and doing it self-instructed. We all have different skills everywhere. But sometimes we can, because they're all involved in the same process, we see them all as one, and a lacking in one area, which a lot of people tend to find in illustration, can make us feel like we lack a lot of skill everywhere else, which I don't believe is true. And a lot of the times as art journalists, we are always getting art supplies and swatching them out and testing them, or we're doing technique practice with art supplies, like learning how to glaze watercolor, or we're getting more confident blending pencils or using alcohol markers to get smooth gradients. Like, we're doing all those random things that people think are, they're not finished products. They're not, the art itself isn't created in that swatch moment, but you're learning stuff about it. So this was about taking a very simple illustration, something that looked pretty naive and pretty juvenile, and elevating it with all the skills that we might have in rendering. So using pens to do cross-hatching, using watercolor, like water reactive marker to spread ink through, like a really gestural watercolor piece might have, using pencils to add extra depth and shading, and using the pencil to make gradients, because gradients is something that we think is, it requires a little bit more skill. You don't really see a 4-year-old drawing a perfect gradient. So it was a bit of a mind trickery kind of a lesson, where you made something look really good and finished, even though you started it making it look really crazy and simple and basic. And I really like that. That is something that is very common with the work that I do. And I think you kind of see that in a lot of my 100-day project, because the actual illustration themselves are stamped together. So I have taken that part of having to figure it out of my brain. Even the proportions and everything, I just take all of that out of my brain. I've got a base to work with. I feel confident with my illustration skills, so I add a little thing here and there. I might bring a line in here and there. I might tweak a position here and there because I have some skills to do that. But then what you really see when it becomes finished, if I'm trying to make it finished, are all the rendering skills, like how I use my pencils to do this, or the type of watercolor techniques that I use to achieve something really modeled and flowy and gestural, and like just all that great stuff. So that was a great Wednesday lesson, I thought, and something that I would love to explore further in a workshop. That idea of separating illustration and the idea of, the concept and the illustrating, and then the finishing and the rendering. We did look at that through the Playtest Pals. That was kind of a really long, drawn-out version of that. But I mean, I think there's always a good value to revisiting these principles and these ideas in just different types of videos, right? Sometimes it's just good to revisit it a couple of times. I rarely get anything the first go, so I feel good about that. It's been raining a lot. I think I said that. Oh, we have a new Patreon video for Friday. It's a new series, actually, which I think we'll only get this video in. I don't know how many videos we'll get in beforehand, but it's called Refresh. And I'm going through my watercolor palette and coming up with a new season of watercolors for myself. I did change a bunch, and I did some swatching as well that turned out really beautiful, if I do say so myself. So I put that available in the downloads for my patrons as well, and I'll also put them in Collage Club for next month. As a little bonus, because I just think they're so pretty. But I changed out my watercolor palette. I'm very happy with that. I made such a stupid mistake and did not change the right orange, and I didn't change it yet, so I don't know what I'm going to do. I might just have to refresh again down the track. But this new series I felt like was just something that maybe was missing. You know, I love to just chat and I love to go through everything, but I rarely stop and intentionally talk about certain art supplies. When I'm using them, I kind of talk a lot about them, but to compare and contrast, to swatch things out, all that really simple stuff that I would just do in my, you know, off-camera time just to enjoy myself, I'll still do that off camera. You know, I'm never going to promise that I'll film absolutely everything, but I think for certain things, like I have a whole bunch of pots next to my desk like these, and from time to time I'll just go through and test all these out, which pens belong in here, which pens don't, which pens are dead, which pens need to go into a different thing because they're getting too many. Every month I get a box of Art Snacks supplies for the Art Snacks box freestyle videos. And so every month I'm putting new stuff in these pots and pens and I'm running out of all these spaces. So I usually have to resort them out every couple of months anyway. And now I've just picked up a few extra little vessels to house new things in. Like these are all ballpoint pens. These are all Uniball Signo pens. Like how do I have that many that they could be in their own pot? So that's all there. And I figured that it would be a cute little series to do that is still very much in this art journaling world, but it's just something different that we can enjoy together, chatting about all of that and refreshing. Because it's not like a supplies haul. It's not like a video that's a review. It's not any of that. I'm just refreshing my setup, refreshing my palettes, refreshing everything. And I do that. I just never really show people. Like here, this is due for a refresh as well, because ever since I went to Paris and London, I had that set of pencils I was using. I put them in here and I've just been adding to them here. Like suddenly these are my favorite pencils right now, but they're bursting at the seams. They're not fitting in here. So this needs to be dealt with. So maybe you'll see a refresh episode on YouTube soon, but another cute little series. That'll be the last of the new series that we have on Patreon at this point. All of the series will either just continue on until we finish. And yeah, that's it. That's all that on that. I have one other journal piece of information. Ooh. We started this, by we, I mean Steve and I. This is what we did. We did doubles journaling, which was really funny. I had a blast. This is another Trader Joe's journal, but I put a white cover on it this time because this was sitting behind my door and I was so annoyed of seeing it. I thought I could make that a cover. And I thought it was watercolor paper, but I'm not quite sure because it's like, it has this weird spotted effect with the watercolor. So I don't know. But in any case, I used a whole bunch of Trader Joe's paper bags to make another one of these because I loved my Christmas one so much. My Christmas one still has a bit of work that I need to do before it's finished. But it's mostly finished. So hopefully I'll get that done and flip it for you soon because that was so much fun. I obviously had to create a new one. I love how like I can throw it all in there. It really doesn't matter. And I love having all that extra space. The photos can be huge. The ephemera can be huge, which is a big thing for me because I don't really have anywhere to put big ephemera. I've been making all those garbage journals and I still really like those. But at this point, a lot of my garbage is going into the Trader Joe's journal. Probably time for a journal update video, isn't it? Oh, I think I might have like journal ADHD. Is that a thing? The audition. I'm going to leave you on this because by the time you watch this video on Friday, or maybe you're watching it later, in which case, hello to you in the future, I will be at an audition. I'm very excited to go. Like I said, I gave myself this whole week to prepare myself for it because overall, like my experience with auditions has been really mixed. When I was younger, I would go into auditions thinking that I already had the job, that like for some reason there was this formality where I had to go in there and basically they just wanted to see me perform because it would make them happy to see who they've hired already. Like I was delusionally confident, which I think was a great thing for me at that age. When I see 18-year-olds doing that now, yes, of course I feel all the things you would feel about an 18-year-old doing it. Did I know they were thinking that back then? Yes, of course. But do you think I cared when I was 18? No. So do I think they care when they're 18? No. Like life happens how it happens. These are just stereotypes for a reason. And I fully played into it. Look, Cinderella, if the shoe fits, wear it. So I feel interesting. I feel like auditions are interesting to me now, especially in a post-COVID world too. Auditions have been like really different. For years, people have been not going to auditions in person. They've been doing them over Zoom or doing self-tapes, which means you would just film yourself doing stuff and send that in. So in-person auditions actually feel very, very formal now, where they used to just be standard practice. And I remember the good old days of, going to Debbie Reynolds in LA and lining up around the block for hours and seeing people that you might have maybe known once upon a time, and seeing all the people that are really familiar with each other being like, oh, hey, really didn't like that. But as long as I knew at least one person, I felt calm. I've been to auditions. I've enjoyed going to auditions. I've had like a journey like this with auditions. It's just different. You get older and you are, you have all your wisdom and your experience. And I think ever since my accident and I went back to auditioning and those years of it not working out, it was such a big blow to the ego I had that used to fuel that confidence in me. That was like, well, of course I'm going to get it. Why wouldn't I get it? And I really do think you need some of that, because these situations are so intense. Like, you can slice it and dice it any which way you want. At the end of the day, tomorrow, I will take all of this into a room and have a bunch of people look at me and have expectations that I don't know what they have. Like, I don't know what they want. I'm just going to throw myself in front of them and demonstrate whatever skill they ask me to do to the best of my ability, just for them to say, that's not good enough for us, or that might work for us, but we don't know yet, or yeah, that'll work for us. And like, it's just an intense situation to be in. Like, no matter which way you look at it, I think it's gotten better over time. They used to be a lot more cutthroat, and they used to be, and I don't know if they do this anymore in the room, but we used to get typed out in the room. So they would look at you and be like, no, 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 before you'd even start, which sometimes I think is good, just for the fact that, like, tomorrow, if they're not looking for larger bodied dancers, I'm not quite sure what the PC term is these days, but we're not allowed to say fat. So if we're going to say larger bodied dancers, if that's what they're looking for, then great for me. But if from the get-go, they're really not going to cast that, they're really not going to look for that, I will be in there, dancing my heart out, being excited, being, happy and everything, anticipating what will never be for me, right? So you just never really know. It's a hard situation to be in, and you can't overthink everything, but I am an overthinker. I will analyze everything. So what I like to do is kind of throw all of the possible scenarios at myself, from absolute best to absolute worst, and just anticipate any of it. I think the thing that gets me more upset than anything is when I feel shocked. Like, if I get into that position where I am like shocked or surprised by something, that starts to send me out of control a little bit in a really high pressure situation like an audition. I think the thing that really calms my nerves is that it's an audition for Disney. I have worked for Disney before. I'm still currently employed by the Disneyland Resort, even though I don't perform in any shows there right now. And so I feel like this is familiar. You never want to feel like it's too familiar, but I feel like it's familiar enough for me to feel comfortable. I'm hopefully anticipating seeing some people I know tomorrow, so that will be fun to see them too. And I've had a real shift in my confidence lately. Like, I might be becoming delusionally confident again. Because we talked about this on Patreon as well. In the last 5 years, when I was going over like the start of my journal, we were revisiting the 5 years, and a lot of it was about weight. And I had a big conversation about it that I won't really dive back into too much here, but to cut a super long story short, many of the casting directors that have hired me through the past have made comments on my weight, my size, how big I am, how I'm not cut enough, I'm not sexy enough to wear a black mesh top, but I was sexy enough to wear a white mesh top. Like, a lot of things that were contradictory. Back in the day, we used to have to be weighed, and we would be sent in, like, we'd have to send in our weight every week to make sure that we weren't gaining weight or losing too much weight, just so that the costumes would fit. I had contracts where you had to get into undergarments and send photos of yourself like in undergarments, just so that the casting people could see your body and see what you looked like and make sure that you were still appropriate to be on stage. That was just what it was from what I remember. Since I've come back, and this is back in like 2009, 2010, like we're talking over 10 years ago, since I've come back in these past few months is a very different landscape. Casting directors are more willing to hire people that don't fit into a really narrow view of, beauty or body types or height ranges or, skin colors. Like, diversity has really broadened the scope of possibility for people to be hired into things that they typically wouldn't have expected to be hired into before. So I think that has a lot to do with why I feel a little bit more confident, because I'm experiencing things now with the body I have now that if I saw when I was 18, I'd be like, that guy's getting nothing. Like, I would have laughed at me thinking I was getting a job at 18. The world is a different place now. It's not like that. Obviously, there are still some things that I just, being realistic, just aren't for me. But I think that there are more opportunities than I expected. And that has put a little bit of hope back into me. And hope is a really valuable thing to have when you are going into an audition. You really don't want to go in feeling hopeless. So I'm really thankful for that. It's not perfect. It's, all the kinks haven't been ironed out yet. I still think it's a pretty new world that a lot of these spaces are entering. Like, there's still a lot to be figured out, but I already know that they know what I look like because they've just seen me working there. I had a few opportunities to dance there, and they made costumes that fit my body and it worked out. And I know that they know what I look like because there were photos when I submitted my audition. So they looked at the photos and they said, yeah, he can come in. We want to see him dance. Like, that makes me feel very good to start with. And I've just been anticipating it because I always like to think that at the very least, the audition is just a really fun dance class that I get to do, that I don't have to pay for, because dance classes can be expensive. So I feel, and let's be real, I'm a bit of a show off too. Like, I really love to dance and I really love to show off dancing. So an audition is like the perfect setting for that part of me to have its place. Like, that part of me doesn't need to come out when I'm actually performing and, trying to be a part of a team and everything. But there's one place in this life that you should go in and should feel really confident and show it all up, and that is in an audition. And so I think, it feels like the old me gets to be revived every now and again when I get these opportunities to audition. I felt like that when I auditioned for Knott's Berry Farm. For that show, I had such an amazing time. And again, like, I felt like it was okay for me to be in there at the size that I was, because I still could manage to do the things. I think that's just a new thought for me. I used to think that, like, it didn't matter if you could dance. It didn't matter if you looked right or you were the right height or you fit the right profile. If your body wasn't where your body needed to be, you just weren't getting it. That's just not true anymore. So my thoughts about auditions are all kind of blended in there, because there's still a part of me that considers, well, there's always a possibility that maybe it does look like it did 10 years ago, and maybe this would be the audition that will catch you off guard. That's why I kind of prepare myself just in case it might be, but I really don't think it will be. I think this is something that I can just enjoy and look forward to, and that I've been anxiously anticipating it all week. I've just been wanting the time to, like, slow enough that I can get all my work done and deal with my responsibilities, but quick enough that I could get to it and just be in there and give it my best shot. Yeah, I don't expect anything to happen. I don't know exactly what they're looking for. You always kind of wish you knew, but you really don't. Especially for dancers, because we're never really cast in specific roles for things. We're just an ensemble. So as long as we look like we'll fit into a group of whatever the group is doing, you kind of get slotted in that way. But yeah, I am excited to do it nonetheless. And I will let you know, of course, how it all goes. And fingers crossed that it goes well, because if it doesn't, I might be a little upset. I'm not going to lie. I'll probably be very upset. And again, just because I need something to look forward to. So I hope it goes well. I'll deal with it. Obviously, it's life, but I've just been having too much fun dancing lately, and I enjoyed dancing at Disneyland so much that, like, I just really want to go back. I just really want to enjoy myself, being social, having like that job that would get me out of the house, that I get to see people and speak to them, and being an entertainer again. it fills up that part of my cup in a way that nothing else does. So I think I'm just stating the obvious at this point, but I'll have a great time. I'll let you know how it goes. Wish me good luck, and please, if that's your thing, if that's what you do, and then I'll let you know. I'll probably take Saturday off. I won't be able to take a long time off because I've got to get back to work, but I do need a day off, and I'll probably take Saturday off because I'll either be celebrating or commiserating. This is taking such a turn for the worst at the end of this video. No, it's fine. It'll be all good. I've dealt with everything else that's come my way thus far. But I do hope to get back to Zumba and get my new spot. And that'll make me happy all over again, and I'll have a great start to a new week. Alrighty, that's it for me. Thank you so much. Goodbye.